Have you ever looked around you and thought that, hey, maybe this place is hell? Well, that's exactly what the Cathars believe. They believe that it was actually the devil who created Earth as a cosmic prison to trap souls, and that you and all of us are actually fallen angels trapped in the material world. So today we're exploring one of the Cathars' secret books called Interrogatio Johannes, or The Secret Supper, where Jesus reveals the creation of the earth by Satan and the entrapment of souls. It also explains how we are the offspring of Satan and the angels and descendants of these merged beings. It's going to be very interesting as we explore this. Like I said, well, I didn't say it yet, but last week we read the first part of this book. We're going to continue reading it today. If you didn't see the last part, that's okay. You don't need to make sense of what's going on here, but it is there. There's a whole playlist on this book. So let's begin. We're talking about the Satanic history of Earth's creation. Now, before we do, as always, please like and subscribe, because remember, my channel is about raising consciousness. It's not just about entertainment. It's about spreading information so that we can create a new Earth. So make sure you hit like and subscribe. It helps the algorithms show this to more people. On that note as well, please follow me on Spotify. My Spotify podcast is Dawn of the New Earth. Also, that helps spread this information, like I said, and you can access all these videos there. And let's see, remember, my new book comes out on May 16th, the first of 5 books I will be releasing this year, all about the Neogenian system. So I believe that's it, my friend. Let's get started. Let's jump right into this. So we're taking a look, like I said, at this book called The Secret Supper, or Interrogatio Johannes, and I'm going to put it up on screen so you can see a bit of it right now. Now, I want to remind you that you can read this for free on gnosis.org. Gnosis.org is a great resource. They have a ton of great books, the Nag Hammadi library, Cathar texts, a lot you can read there for free. It's a great site. Highly recommend it. All right. So what happened last time we read The Secret Supper? Well, if you recall, last time we read The Secret Supper, it was describing how Satan wanted to become like God, and he convinced a third of the angels to join him. But remember, in The Secret Supper, it's revealed that Satan is actually the God of the Bible. So it's a little bit of a mind twist to remember that, because we're so used to thinking in terms of Christianity. But remember, when Cathars are talking about God, and in The Secret Supper, when it's talking about God, they mean the God of light, the God who created the spiritual domain. When they talk about Satan, they're talking about the God of the Bible, the one who created the earth and the material domain and Adam and Eve. That is Satan in their eyes. So the God of the Bible, Satan, wanted to be like the God of light, the spiritual God, and rebelled in heaven and took a third of the angels with him. Now, this rebellion did not go well, and he repented and said, hey, please forgive me for what I have done. And it says here, let me read it. It says, I have sinned. Have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. The Lord was moved with pity for him and gave him peace to do what he would until the 7th day. Okay, this is really important. So the Lord had pity. He said, okay, you know what? I'm going to let you do whatever you want until the 7th day. This means a couple different things. So we know from the Bible, in standard Christian theology, the earth was created in 7 days. There was 6 days of creation, and then on the 7th day, God rested. So God is going to let Satan do whatever he wants for 7 days. And in those 7 days' time, he's going to create the earth and create humanity and create the world. But in addition to that, 7 days also represents 7 ages. So not only are we talking about the 7 days of creation here, but we're talking about the time that Satan will rule the world. And this is in terms of 7 ages. And the reason why it's in terms of 7 ages is because in religion, particularly Christian religion, 7 is often a number attributed to perfection or completion. So it's a cycle of perfection, a cycle of completion for 7 ages. So here we're having 7 used in 2 different ways. One in 7 days, the creation of the earth, and then 7 ages total is where Satan will reign. So that's where we left off. Let's continue now. It says, then Satan took his seat above the firmament and gave command to the angel who was over the air and who was over the waters, so that they raised 2/3 of the waters high into the air. Of the remaining third, they formed wide seas. The division of the waters was commanded of the Father invisible. So we have here Satan taking his seat above the firmament. Now the firmament is a place that divides basically heaven from earth, the heavenly waters from the earthly waters. So it's sort of that in-between area, that transition between earth and heaven. Now, what's really interesting about this, God, that's so hard. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say. The firmament is a really odd idea if it's taken literally. Because if it's taken literally, which it shouldn't be, all this stuff is allegorical. But if it's taken literal, it is a division of the heavenly waters from the earthly waters. So metaphorically, that makes sense. It's just a division between a transition point between the spiritual and the physical. And it's basically saying that Satan took his seat above, still like in the spiritual, but he's commanding and creating in the material. But if it's taking literal, it's very odd. And the reason why I mention that is because I grew up as a Christian and we were fundamentalists, which means we took the Bible literally. And the firmament is an idea that's in the Bible. And there are a lot of Christians who believe that the earth was once actually literally surrounded by water. And some people cite, the story is, remember the story of Noah's Ark where God floods the earth? According to Cathars, it would be Satan floods the earth. But according to the Bible, God floods the earth. Does that sound like a very godly thing to do? To just eradicate every human being on earth, including children and pregnant women and animals? Does that seem fair at all? No. Anyway, I digress. But anyway, there are some Christians who believe that the water from the flood came from the waters above the firmament, the heavenly water. And that's why the earth isn't surrounded by water anymore, because, they used up, earth used to be surrounded by water, but they used up all the water because that's what God had fall on earth to flood the world. There are some Christians who believe that. Now, as for us, like my how I was raised, that was kind of iffy. I remember we didn't really know. It was like, well, maybe that's true, but it does sound kind of weird. I guess that was one of the edges of sanity that, like, talking snakes, that's fine. People being raised from the dead, water into wine, all that's fine. But the earth being surrounded by water, that was a little out there. So I wasn't taught that it was completely true. I was taught that, maybe, we don't really know. Maybe it stands for something else or whatever. But anyway, I think that I just wanted to put that out there because it shows you how funny it is and what ridiculous theories you come to when you take this stuff to be literally true. It's not literally true. It's allegorical. So anyway, let's continue here. We're basically having Satan commanding 2 angels, right? So he's above the firmament. He commands 2 angels. One's in charge of air. The other's in charge of water. And he directs them to lift 2/3 of the world's water into the air and uses the remaining to form large seas. So he's doing stuff with water and air and forming seas. That's essentially what is occurring here. Let's see. Again, Satan bade the angel who was over the waters take a stand upon the 2 fish. 2 fish. What 2 fish are we talking about here? Well, remember last time there was the idea that Earth was on two fish. And so we have the idea that Satan is taking control of these two fish, which means basically Satan's taking control of the world. That's what this is. That's what the allegory here is for. Standing on these two fish is taking control of the world. Again, silly, but allegorically, it makes sense. So take a stand upon the two fish. Essentially, we're taking control of the world here. And the angel raised the earth upward with his head, and dry land appeared. When he took a crown, okay, so now when Satan took a crown from the angel who was over the air, from half of it he made himself a throne. And when he took a crown from the angel who was over the waters, from half he made the light of the moon and the half the light of the day. So you see how Satan is beginning to take all of these powers. He's taking these crowns from the angel of air, from the angel of waters, and he creates his throne and the light of the moon and daylight. And from precious stones, he made fire. And from fire, he made all the hosts of heavens and the stars. And from them, he made angels, his ministering spirits, according to the plan of the governor most high. He also made thunder, rain, hail, and snow, and over these he set his ministering angels. So this is just talking about all the different things that Satan is creating. But importantly, you will see that Satan is the master of the elements here. What is Satan doing? Satan is above the firmament, which is a spiritual domain, the transition. So you can see that Satan has that inherent spiritual element there. He is an angelic being. He has spirit. He's taking the power of air. He's taking the power of water from stones. He's creating the power of fire. And of course, he has control over the earth. So you see, spirit, air, earth, wind, and fire. Satan is controlling all of these elements. Let's see. So now we get to Satan creating living beings. It says, he commanded the earth to bring forth all living things, animals, trees, and herbs. The sea he commanded to bring forth fish, and the air, birds of the heavens, and he pondered on making man to serve him. Okay, this is really important here. So he's creating the earth, the sea, the air, and he's making them produce all forms of life, animals, plants, and birds. But now Satan wants to create human beings. Why does he want to create human beings? Because he wants to be served. And this follows in line with what we read in the Bible with the God of the Old Testament, the creator God who creates humanity simply to worship him and to serve him. And it's ridiculous when people go like, oh, well, he gave humans free will. Think about it. He created humans to worship him and to serve him. And according to the Bible, when some of these humans stopped worshiping and serving him, what did he do? He unalived them all in a flood. He flooded the whole earth. So does that really sound like free will to you? Like, does that, if you give someone two options, but say like, okay, option A, you're fine, you're good if you take that option. You're free to take option B, but I'm going to unalive you if you do. Is that really free will here? No, of course not. So this isn't truly, if God was really cared about free will, he wouldn't eliminate almost all of humanity except for one family simply because they wouldn't serve him. But who would do that? A satanic being. And that's exactly what the Cathars believe. They said, hey, this is not a godly thing to do. This is not a godly act. It is an evil act, which is why they thought the Old Testament was inspired by Satan. They essentially thought the Old Testament was written through the influence of Satan. And this idea that the Old Testament God, by the way, I'm sure those of you who watch my channel already know this, but if you're new here, it's not just relegated to the Cathars. This wasn't just one-off movement. The Cathars believe this. The Gnostics, who came much earlier, also believed this. And the Marcionites, led by Marcion, also believed this, who was the creator of the world's first Bible, or the world's first Christian canon. And he specifically left out the Old Testament because he believed it was influenced by an evil deity. So we have Satan wanting to create human beings. Why does he want to create human beings? To be his slaves, essentially, to serve him. And he pondered on making man to serve him. He took the clay of the earth and made man like unto himself. And he then bade an angel of the second heaven to enter the body of clay. So now he is taking an angelic soul and having it enter the body that he created. So this is really important to understand here. So according to the Cathars, this is the origin of human beings, comes from fallen angelic souls. Of this body, he took a part and made another body in the form of a woman, and bade an angel of the first heaven to enter into it. And the angels grieved deeply. See, the angels didn't like this. They were grieving. They were saddened. Why were they saddened? Because they had to take on mortal human forms. The angels grieved deeply that they thus had a mortal form imposed upon them, and they now existed in different forms. And Satan bade them to perform the works of the flesh in their bodies of clay. So now, Satan commanded them to commit evil, essentially. But here's the interesting part. They didn't know how. They didn't know how to do it. They didn't know how to be bad. It says, sorry, the text is very small. And I keep losing my place. Here, this will help maybe if I highlight it. And Satan, yes. So, and Satan bade them to perform the works of the flesh in their bodies of clay, but they did not know how to commit sin. They didn't know how to do it. The originator of sin accomplished his purpose. So the originator of sin, meaning Satan, accomplished his purpose by his seduction in this way. So essentially, he's got a plan. He takes the angels, he traps them in bodies. He says, hey, commit sin. They don't know how to commit sin. So he hatches a plan to trick them into sinning. And remember, in the Bible, God creates the Garden of Eden. And in the Garden of Eden, he places the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And God says you can eat from any tree you want except for the tree of knowledge. First of all, don't you think that's like a weird thing to do? Anyway, again, Christians try and say, oh, well, it's free will. God did it because it's still weird. It doesn't really make sense. But anyway, especially to make knowledge off limits, to make knowledge specifically off limits is very telling, to make knowledge the ultimate sin. But anyway, according to the Cathars, why did God do this? As a trick. So it says Satan planted a paradise, the Garden of Eden, and set men therein, and bade them not to eat of its fruits. So he put the humans in the paradise and said, don't eat of the fruit. The devil entered paradise and planted a bed of reeds in the midst of paradise. Of his spittle he made a serpent and bade him remain in the reeds. So Satan creates reeds, and from his spit he creates a serpent. And again, this is just emphasizing that this serpent is an extension from him. It is created from his essence. So he creates this serpent from his own essence, from his spit, and tells the serpent to hide in the reeds. Thus the devil concealed the knowledge of his deceit so that they would not perceive his treachery. So basically what is being said here, because in the Bible you have God and then you have the serpent, and God's supposed to be God and the serpent's supposed to be the devil. And the serpent's never actually called the devil in the Bible, but that's a whole nother thing. But the serpent in the Bible, the serpent's the bad guy, right? And is commonly associated with the devil or Satan. So you have this sort of dichotomy in the Bible, where in the Bible you have God who creates the Garden of Eden, and then you have the serpent or Satan, who apparently goes against God's will. But the Cathars in the Secret Supper are saying, no. It was all Satan, and Satan just did this as a trick to trick humanity. So he was both God and the serpent, Satan and the serpent. He was both, and did all of this on purpose to get these spiritual beings to sin. So thus the devil concealed the knowledge of his deceit so that they would not perceive his treachery. So because he couldn't just do it himself, because they didn't know how to sin, they didn't want to sin. But because it was done through this serpent, they didn't know that it was a plan hatched by the devil. So he went to them saying, "Eat all of the fruit in paradise, but of the fruit of good and evil, eat not." All right. So we know this story, same story in the Bible, except it's coming from the devil. Eat of all the fruit that you want, except for from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Thereafter, the wicked devil, entering into the evil serpent, deceived the angel who was in the form of a woman, and poured out upon her head a longing for sin, and Eve's desire was like a glowing oven. So the devil goes into the serpent, goes to the angel in the form of a woman, or Eve. The serpent goes to Eve and creates in her a longing for sin, and Eve's desire was like a glowing oven. In other words, he made her horny. Forthwith, it's much more interesting than the Bible, don't you think? Forthwith, the devil in the form of the serpent came out of the reeds and sated his lust on her with the serpent's tail. So the devil has intercourse, because now Eve is glowing like an oven, and the devil wants to have intercourse with Eve, and so he does, in the form of a serpent with the serpent's tail. Can use your imagination as to what occurred here. But as, you know, strange and humorous as this might be, there's a really interesting metaphor being put forward here. There's a really interesting allegory that I want you to pay attention to, because this is actually really interesting. So take a look at this. It says, "That is why the offspring are called not sons of God, but sons of the devil and sons of the serpent, fulfilling the diabolic desires of their father, even unto the end of the world." After this, the devil poured out his longing upon the head of the angel who was in Adam, and both angels were affected by a lust for debauchery, together begetting children of the devil and of the serpent, until the consummation of the world. So what's going on here? What does this mean? And so this is really interesting. Basically, the devil is creating lust in them, having intercourse with them, and having them have intercourse with each other, and thus all the children of the world are the children of the devil and of the serpent. So what this means is, and this is really interesting, so according to the Cathars, we are both born as this spirit. We're born from the copulation, essentially, of angels and Satan. And so we are angelic and satanic. And what this represents is the merging or union of the spiritual and the material. And we can understand this from a metaphysical perspective as the angelic part of us is what we are, what we truly are, our souls. Us as a soul in the Neogenian system as a zeta. Us as a soul. That is the angel. Our body would be of the devil or of the serpent or of Satan. And so we are looked at as sort of this hybrid being of angel and Satan, angel and serpent, which is very interesting because we are these dualistic sort of beings, not a true duality, but an apparent duality, because ultimately everything is spiritual. But we are eternal minds that are interfacing with these avatars. So according to the Cathars, it would be the angelic aspect is interfacing with the satanic aspect. But we're going to continue here. But something I want to point out is that I like the Cathars. I like a lot about what the Cathars believe. And I think that they're very cool, very interesting, and much better than mainstream Christianity, that's for sure. However, I don't agree. I think this is a very interesting way to put it and a very interesting archetypal way to put it, but I don't agree with this. So they saw the material world as being absolutely evil and absolutely satanic. And thus, they saw intercourse as being evil and satanic. And so intercourse was something that they avoided to try and liberate themselves from the material realm. Now, this is not my position or the position of the Neogenian system. The material world is not inherently evil. What the material world is simply a different mode of experience where we can experience reality in terms of separation, in terms of bodies, me being here, you being over there. Now, this world does seem very hellish right now because the world has created it in a satanic fashion, meaning that the rulers of this world have created a system that only benefits a few while the many suffer. And so you can see when I mean it's a satanic system, I mean that it reflects this Catharian hierarchy where you have Satan at the top and everyone else his slaves. Well, we live in a satanic hierarchy right now in terms of the richly billionaires at the top and everyone else the slaves. So you see that allegorical understanding. However, we can transform the world and we can create the kingdom of heaven here and now. Remember, Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas said, the kingdom of heaven is within you and all around you. It's a state of consciousness and a world that we can realize right now. So that's what's important to understand. The Cathars saw the material world as being totally evil, beyond repair, and intercourse as being evil, and that we had to liberate ourselves from the material world and just get back to the spiritual domain. Where that is not the case. We are not just angels. What we truly are the gods of this world. We are the absolute experiencing itself in multiplicity. So the material world is just our clay to create whatever we want. And so we can transmute this world from base metal into gold, to use alchemical terms, meaning we can create a world of pure trash into a world of beauty and actualization. And that's exactly what we aim to do in the Neogenian system, where we aim to create a teleocratic world society. And a teleocracy is based on the word telos, which means purpose. It's a purposeful society for maximizing the quality of life for who? For all, not the few, for all. And thus we can transform this hellish world into the kingdom of heaven on earth here and now. And how do we do that? Through a new consciousness. The kingdom of heaven is within you and around you. We must realize this new consciousness to create the new earth right here and right now. And that's important to remember. And I just want to hammer that in all the time because it's easy to get depressed with how trashy the world is right now and to get in this mindset of wanting to escape and wanting to run away and wanting to disconnect. And that's what all these systems offer you. Nirvana, extinguishment. Heaven, a place in the Hinterwelt, the other world, another domain. There is another domain. We are from the other domain, but this domain is one where we can create brilliant experiences together. And that's why things of the flesh are not necessarily evil. They are just modes of experience to have together. And if we are having these modes of experience together, where we're not harming each other and it's consensual and a positive experience, there's nothing wrong with it. That's why we are here. We are here to experience each other and the world in many different ways and many different forms. Like that's the point of existence. The point of existence is to enjoy life and to understand reality. Because the more we understand reality, the better fields and realms of experience for our enjoyment that we can create. So I just want to point that out. That's really important. I think it's very, very cool to look at humanity in like how the Cathars archetypally put it as being this fusion of angels and Satan, where the angelic part is the soul and the satanic part is the body or matter. I think that's very, very, very interesting in an archetypal way, but we have to be careful because symbols are very powerful and they shape the way we think. And we have to remember that even though this is an interesting symbolic way to look at things, it's not actually true. The material world is not actually satanic. The material world is not actually evil. Our bodies are not actually evil. It all seems like that because we live in a trashy world. But like Christ said in the Gospel of Thomas, we can transform the earth right here and right now. And when I reference Jesus Christ in the Gospel of Thomas, I'm not saying as though like that has some kind of, oh, well, just because, it was written about in this gospel means it's true. No, I just reference it because it's compatible with how we know reality works. We know how reality works through meta-rationalism, through using logic and reason to understand the energetic structure of reality and to understand that reality is based on sinusoidal waveforms that are expressed in terms of wave interference patterns that project a material world that we can interact with, and that we exist in the frequency domain but can interact in the space-time domain through interfacing with an avatar. And we understand that reality is dialectically and teleologically evolving, and we are taking a part in this evolution because everything is us, everything is what we are. And this falls in line with the different things that I'm referencing. So I'm not using these things as a source of authority. These are learning tools. They're allegories. Some allegories are right, some allegories are not. This allegory is very interesting, but we have to remember that the material world is not actually evil. And it's important to remember that because we're never going to change it if we keep thinking that it is. It's something for us to, it's just our clay. That's what it is. The earth is just our clay. We can make whatever we want out of it. Unfortunately, it's a trashy mess right now. But as Neogenians, we are here to create a new beginning and to transform the earth through a new consciousness. So very interesting idea here, though. So now we go to John talking to Jesus. And John says, after that, I, John, questioned the Lord, saying, why do men say that Adam and Eve were made by God and placed in paradise to keep his commandments, and that the transgression of the Father's commandments, they were delivered up unto death? And the Lord said unto me, hear, John, most beloved, men are foolish who speak this. For my Father did not, in transgression of his own law, shape bodies of clay, but by the Holy Spirit made only all the virtues of heaven. These, however, for their sins and by their fall, are found possessing bodies of clay and are delivered up to death. So Adam or John, remember John is having the secret supper in heaven where Jesus is revealing secrets to him. And John is saying, hey, how come people say that God created the earth and created paradise and put people in paradise to keep his commandments? And Jesus says those people are idiots. Jesus says those who are saying that God created the Garden of Eden and put humans in the Garden of Eden are foolish. Men are foolish who speak thus. For my Father did not do this. Jesus is saying my Father. Jesus is not, that Satan is not Christ's father. So Jesus is not the son of the creator God. Jesus is the son of the higher God, the invisible Father. And Jesus is saying, the invisible Father, my Father, that's what Jesus is saying, my Father did not create bodies of clay. My Father created everything spiritual. So you have this war of two entities, an entity of light and an entity of darkness, a spiritual entity and an entity that is spiritual but is associated with matter. So you have this dichotomy of spirit and matter, light and darkness. And we have the idea here that Jesus is saying people, what the Bible says is basically wrong. What is in the New Testament is incorrect. That only foolish people believe that. That's what Jesus is saying, or say that Satan actually created the world. Satan created bodies. The true God created that which is spiritual. So again, you have this very strict dualism of light and dark, spirit and matter, good and evil. Now, while that's very interesting and much better than modern Christianity, always keep in mind, that's not actually how reality is. Reality is not a dualistic system, but a monistic system, a unitary system where reality expresses itself in different ways. Matter is just not actually matter, it's just another expression of mind. Matter is simply thought that has been slowed to such a state that we experience it as a material world. This comes from wave interference patterns and light slowing down below the speed of light. And this was understood by one of the greatest physicists, David Bohm, who said that all matter is frozen light. Light is frozen. And that's a great way to think about it. If you think of a pool of water as being like the realm of mind or spirit, then ice floating in that water would be like matter. But it's not a separate thing. It's not different fundamentally from the water. It's just water in a different form. And that ice can melt back into water, or you could freeze part of that water to make ice again. And that's the same thing in this reality of mind, this mathematical sea of waveforms of inner light generates the illusion of a material world that's not inherently different or evil. It's our world to sculpt. Think about it this way. If you go to sleep and have a dream and it's a nightmare, you're going to think that what do you want to do? When you go to sleep and dream and you have a nightmare, what do you want to do? Well, have you ever had a nightmare and you start to realize that you're dreaming? And so you try to wake up, and sometimes it's really hard. And I've had that happen where I'm like, oh shit, I'm dreaming, but this is really scary. I don't like this dream. I want to wake up. And I try really hard to open up my eyes, but it's really hard to do. Sometimes you're able to do it. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes it takes a little while and finally you're able to open your eyes. Maybe you even have sleep paralysis after that. That often happens. But anyway, you probably had that experience where you have a nightmare. And you're like, oh my God, I can't. I want to wake up. This is scary. Well, now imagine that you're sleeping and dreaming and you have a brilliant dream that's fabulous, where everything you possibly want is happening. Are you going to want to wake up? No, you're going to be like, this is great. I am enjoying this very much. I would like to continue this dream, please. And you'll continue the dream as much as you can. The material world is like that. Right now, we live in a nightmare. So people are constantly they want to wake up. They want to escape it in some way. But the problem is that in this dream, we're going to just continue to relocalize again and again and again, or we're going to reincarnate again and again and again. So this is a nightmare where, imagine if you might wake up for a second, but then you fall asleep and you just go whoop, back to the nightmare again. And you just keep going back to the nightmare again and again and again and again and again. Well, the only way to stop this is to transform the nightmare into a dream by taking control of the dream world, by becoming lucid and understanding that you can alter the dream, that it's not inherently evil or nightmarish. That's just the expression that it's taking right now. You can transform it into a dream. So that's the world that we live in right now. This is a collective dream. We live in a nightmarish reality, and people are wanting to escape or extinguish or ascend, but they don't realize they're just going to continue to localize again and again and again. And the point here is to transform this world into a dream, and we can do that. And then once we do transform this world into a dream, guess what? People aren't going to want to leave. They're going to be like, this is great. And That's what we have to get people to realize, is that we can do this. We can create a world where it's enjoyable, that it's a fantastic, where we don't have to create all these religions and spiritual systems that are all about escaping and running away and extinguishing and ascending. Look at all these systems that are about getting away from Earth. Well, it's because Earth is nightmarish right now, but it's only going to stop being nightmarish when we transform it. If Earth was this beautiful experience, I guarantee you we wouldn't have all these religions about, oh my God, how do we escape this place? No. What we need to do is come together and unite under a new consciousness and create a new beginning, create a new humanity, create a new Earth. That's exactly what we aim to do. And that's what we need to do. That's the only option forward. Now, it's the only positive option forward. There are other options that could occur that could be extremely negative. Humanity could end itself, but we don't want that to happen. We want to create a new Earth, and we are the second coming of Christ in that allegorical way of understanding that we represent together, all of us, the archetype of a new consciousness, a new mind, and establishing the kingdom right here and right now. And I, John, questioned the Lord, saying, Lord, how did man have his spiritual origin in a carnal body? And the Lord said to me, by their fall, spirits of heaven entered the female body of clay and took on flesh from the lusts of the flesh and took on spirit at the same time. Spirit is born of spirit and flesh of flesh, and thus the reign of Satan ceases not in this world. So again, they're looking at matter as being evil, and the Lord is saying, well, John is saying, hey, how is it that man has a spiritual origin, but he's in a material body? How is that possible? And basically, God is saying that the spirits of heaven fell and took on flesh, and this, a big aspect of this is the lusts of the flesh. And this is what keeps Satan reigning in this world. So again, this dichotomy of humans being this dualistic fusion of spiritual beings in carnal bodies with the lusts of the flesh. But remember, we don't want to think this way. Well, I mean, think however you want. But when we understand what reality is, what existence is, this is not a way of thinking that will ultimately help us create a new world. It will just create a environment of wanting to escape. And we don't want to look at matter as I said it enough, but you get what I mean. We would live a very sad life if we didn't want to have fun. If we didn't want to, have experiences with each other and, enjoy the things that physical reality has to offer. Like, that's half of the reason why we're here. So, and I questioned the Lord, saying, for how long will Satan have dominion in the world over the essences of men? And the Lord replied, my Father will permit him to reign 7 days. That is 7 ages. So what Jesus is saying is, John says, how long is Satan going to rule here? And we go back to that time where God gave Satan 7 days. And Jesus is saying that Satan will reign for 7 days, but that represents 7 ages, remembering that 7 in religious connotations, contexts, often represents perfection or completeness. So for a cycle, essentially, for a total cycle, 7 ages, Satan, or the material world, will reign. And John asked the Lord, what will be the nature of these 7 ages? And that's where we're going to pick up next time. We're going to talk about the 7 ages, and then the very interesting idea of how Satan is manipulating humanity, as well as We're going to get into the idea of baptism and the Eucharist and why the Cathars were so against the baptism and the Eucharist and saw them as satanic rituals. They saw baptism as a satanic ritual. They saw the Eucharist as a satanic ritual. And we're going to be finding out exactly why that is and what this means. And we are going to do so next time. So thank you, my friends, so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. There are a lot more videos. Check out all the videos on the Cathars on my channel. There's a playlist on them. And like I said, please like and subscribe so that we can spread this information around, as well as follow me on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth. Actually, tell me in the comments if you followed me on Spotify. Leave a comment. Let me know. Tell me that you did. And my new book is coming out May 16th, where I am laying out the Neogenian system. This will be the first of 5 books coming out this year that I have written. So keep an eye out for that. And as always, if you enjoy my work, support over on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial, and you'll get access to all of our members only videos. There's a new members only video every single week. I think you will like them. So support patreon.com/MorgueOfficial or tier 2 or higher on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Big shout out to everyone who does support. You guys are great, especially, let's see, Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Nusalina, Eric, Christopher, Joel, Phillips, Luke, Thomas, Ryan, Antoine, and everyone else. Thank you very much.